What if the Russian Revolution was triggered by a common headache pill? The year is 1912. The Russian Empire is a powder keg. Tsar Nicholas II has 4 healthy daughters, but under the Russian monarchy, none of them can inherit the throne. In 1904, the long-awaited heir is born, Alexei Romanov. The entire weight of a 300-year-old dynasty rests on his shoulders. But the Romanov bloodline carries a hidden debt, Hemophilia B, a genetic glitch passed down from Queen Victoria that turns a simple stumble into a death sentence. While the public sees a strong prince, behind palace walls, Alexei is bleeding to death from the inside out. The world's best doctors are desperate. They reach for the newest wonder drug on the market, aspirin. But instead of saving the prince, they're accidentally thinning his blood, making the hemorrhage worse. Enter Rasputin, a mad monk who claims he can stop the bleeding with a prayer. The terrifying truth? He actually did it, but it wasn't magic. By ordering the doctors to stay away, Rasputin inadvertently stopped the aspirin, the very cure that was killing the boy. By solving a medical mystery with a miracle, Rasputin gained the power to topple an empire. Today, we diagnose the black box that ended the czars. This is Diagnosed History. On this channel, we don't just tell stories, we perform autopsies on the past. We use the lens of modern medicine to find the systemic failures hidden beneath the myths. Today, we're analyzing the Romanov bloodline, a case where a genetic glitch met a miracle cure that masked a lethal medical error. We're exploring the black box phenomenon, the dangerous moment when a system prioritizes a result over an explanation. The setting is the Alexander Palace, just outside St. Petersburg. The year is 1912. Tsar Nicholas II rules over 1/6 of the Earth's surface, the latest in a line of absolute autocrats that had governed Russia since 1613. For 3 centuries, the Romanov dynasty held total power. While the world was moving toward democracy, Nicholas clung to the ancient belief that his right to rule was divine. But this absolute power had a single fragile point of failure: the succession. In the Russian Empire, the rules were absolute. Only a male could inherit the throne. Tsar Nicholas and his wife, Tsarina Alexandra, already had 4 healthy daughters, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and Anastasia, but none of them could be the heir. Without a boy, the 300-year-old Romanov line would simply end. When their boy Alexei Romanov was born in 1904, the empire erupted in celebration. The dynasty was saved. But within weeks, the celebration turned into a nightmare. A tiny bleed from the baby's navel wouldn't stop. The sunbeam of the family was carrying a genetic time bomb, Hemophilia B. To understand Hemophilia B, we have to look at the clotting cascade, the complex biological assembly line that stops you from bleeding out. Think of a blood clot as a protective wall. Normally, when you bleed, your body rushes to build that wall using 2 main tools. First, you have the platelets, which are the bricks that rush to the site of the injury to plug the leak. But bricks alone aren't enough to hold back the pressure. You also need the clotting factors, which act as the mortar. These factors are a series of proteins that trigger one another in a chain reaction. The end goal of this reaction is to produce fibrin. Fibrin is the actual physical mortar. It's a tough, insoluble protein that forms long, sticky strands. These strands weave themselves into a dense mesh, literally gluing the platelets together and trapping red blood cells to create a strong, permanent seal. Alexei suffered from Hemophilia B, which is often called Christmas disease. Interestingly, the name doesn't come from the holiday, but from a 5-year-old boy named Stephen Christmas. In 1952, doctors realized that Stephen's blood lacked a completely different protein than the more common Hemophilia A. This discovery of factor IX deficiency revolutionized our understanding of the clotting cascade. Alexei's disease is an X-linked recessive disorder, which means the genetic error is located on the X chromosome. Because females have two X chromosomes, they usually have a backup healthy gene. If one X carries the hemophilia mutation, the other produces enough clotting factor to keep them healthy. They become carriers, silent biological couriers of the disease. But males like Alexei have an X and a Y. They have no backup. If they inherit that single broken X from their mother, they have the disease. This genetic glitch started with Queen Victoria, who was a spontaneous carrier. She passed the broken X to her daughters, including Princess Alex, later Tsarina Alexandra. Alexandra was a healthy carrier, but when she passed that specific X chromosome to her only son, Alexei, the Romanov line inherited a terminal debt. Pathophysiologically, Alexei was missing clotting factor 9. Without factor 9, the chain reaction breaks. His body could make the bricks, but the process of creating the fibrin mesh, the mortar, never finished. To diagnose this today, we'd see a significantly prolonged APTT, or activated partial thromboplastin time on blood work, confirming a massive delay in the body's ability to form that fibrin seal. For Alexei, the symptoms were brutal. A simple stumble didn't result in a person having a bruise, it resulted in hemarthrosis, internal bleeding directly into his joint cavities. The blood would fill the space, stretching the joint capsule and the surrounding nerves until the pain was agonizing. The boy would scream for days, eventually leading to permanent joint deformity and muscle atrophy. In a modern world, the treatment is straightforward. We simply replace what's missing with synthetic recombinant factor 9 infusions. We give the body the mortar it needs to weave that fibrin mesh. In 1912, aspirin was the Silicon Valley tech of medicine. It was the newest wonder drug for pain and inflammation. Naturally, the Romanov doctors gave it to Alexei to help with his agonizing joint swelling. But here is the clinical nightmare. Aspirin is an anti-platelet agent. Chemically, aspirin works by irreversibly inhibiting an enzyme called cyclooxygenase 1, or COX-1. Usually, COX-1 helps platelets produce thromboxane A2, the chemical signal that tells platelets to stick together. By blocking COX-1, aspirin makes the platelets slippery. While Alexei already had bad mortar, no fibrin, the doctors were now making his bricks slippery. By giving him aspirin, they were inadvertently thinning his blood of a boy who couldn't clot in the first place. They weren't treating him, they were actually making his bleeding worse. This is where the mad monk Grigory Rasputin enters. Rasputin was a Siberian peasant and self-proclaimed holy wanderer with a reputation for mystical healing and prophetic visions. In a world of rigid aristocrats and failing medical science, he was a chaotic outsider who claimed he could communicate directly with God. Rasputin's climb up the social ladder was calculated and relentless. He used his reputation as a Stronican, a holy man, to charm the high society hostesses of St. Petersburg, who were obsessed with mysticism and the occult. He became a celebrity in the salons, a wild man from the East who offered spiritual depth to a bored aristocracy. By the time the Tsarina heard of him, Rasputin had already built a network of influential followers who vouched for his gifts. By 1912, the Romanovs were at their breaking point. At a hunting lodge in Spala, Alexei was dying from a massive internal hemorrhage. The finest doctors in Europe had failed and were essentially waiting for the end. In a state of total maternal desperation, Tsarina Alexandra sent a telegram to Rasputin. His reply was simple: "The little one will not die. Do not allow the doctors to bother him too much." When the doctors stepped away, the bleeding stopped. To the Tsarina, this was a miracle. To modern medicine, a systemic reset. By ordering the doctors to stay away, Rasputin inadvertently stopped the aspirin, the very cure that was killing the boy. By solving a medical mystery with a miracle, Rasputin gained the power to topple an empire.
Today, we diagnose the black box that ended the Tsars. This medical miracle came with a terminal political cost. Because Alexei's hemophilia was a closely guarded state secret, the Russian public had no idea why this unkempt Siberian peasant was suddenly a fixture in the palace. People began to openly question why a random, uneducated peasant was allowed inside the Tsar's inner circle. The silence from the palace was filled with the worst possible rumors. Rasputin's reputation for heavy drinking and sexual debauchery became the talk of the empire. Underground pamphlets circulated scandalous stories, and many in the Russian public became convinced that Rasputin wasn't just a spiritual advisor, but was having an illicit affair with Tsarina Alexandra.
This created a fatal disconnect between the crown and the people. As World War I broke out and the Tsar left for the front lines, the country was effectively left in the hands of the Tsarina and Rasputin. While the rest of the world was shifting toward democratic transparency, the Romanovs retreated into a wall of silence. They couldn't explain that Rasputin was there as a healer because that would mean admitting the heir to the throne was terminally ill. This secrecy turned a medical necessity into a political catastrophe. By March 1917, the pressure reached a breaking point. Riots in Petrograd, now St. Petersburg, over food shortages and the disastrous handling of the war led to the February Revolution. The Tsar, isolated and lacking the support of his own military, was forced to abdicate. The 300-year Romanov rule ended in an instant. What came next was a chaotic dual power system between the provisional government, which hoped to lead Russia toward a liberal democracy, and the Petrograd Soviet, representing the workers and soldiers. But the new government's decision to stay in the war proved fatal. By October 1917, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power in a coup, promising peace, land, and bread. The empire didn't just collapse, it was erased, replaced by the world's first communist state. By protecting a medical secret, the Romanovs had destroyed the public's trust in the institution of the monarchy itself. The tragedy of the Romanovs reveals the danger of the black box solution. By relying on Rasputin, the family accepted a result without understanding the mechanism. To the Romanovs, Rasputin was a mystical input that produced a survival output. But because they ignored the how, they became entirely dependent on the box. This created a massive systemic vulnerability. In science and leadership, a black box is any process where we see what goes in and what comes out, but we have no idea what happens in the middle. When we stop asking why something works, we lose the ability to predict when it will fail. Understanding the mechanism, whether it's the molecular pathway of a drug or the political pathway of a law, is the only way to maintain control. For the Romanovs, failing to look inside the box meant they couldn't see that Rasputin's miracle was actually a side effect of stopping a lethal medical error. Because they didn't understand the science, they overvalued the savior. This lack of transparency turned a medical necessity into a political scandal. The black box didn't just save the prince, it obscured a systemic collapse, creating a vacuum of trust that was eventually filled by revolution. History remembers a revolution. Medicine remembers a patient trapped between a genetic deficiency and a well-intentioned but lethal pharmaceutical error. The lesson is clear. A system that operates in the dark, prioritizing comfort over clarity and miracles over mechanisms, will eventually be destroyed by its own hidden flaws. If you want to see more historical mysteries solved through a clinical lens, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Leave a comment below. Was the fall of the Romanovs a political failure or a medical one? And which historical figure should we diagnose next? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of Diagnosed History.